Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from Jon and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show, and if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
It is Wednesday, November the 29th. I am Jon Pollock, along with Wai Ting, coming off of Dynamite, an overrun edition of Dynamite.
That's right. Yeah. Seems to be the standard these days.
There were too many weeks when by the end of it came, I said, you know what? I could go for a few more minutes here and there. I don't get enough each week. Let's cram in. Can't keep a 2 hour and 8 minute show into 2 hours. Need those 8 minutes to fully breathe.
I mean, as long as it works, why would they stop?
Well, it didn't work last week. The audience went down for the overrun. So, I mean, the whole theory is that you go over the hour. It's one of these like tricks that they would always do where everyone's tuning in for the next show. So it's not like you've got this captive audience. It's like, oh my God, my luck. I wanted to watch Seinfeld, but I'm getting Jay White and Swerve Strickland for 6 minutes. I think I'm going to be a fan from now on.
So why do they keep doing it then?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe this trick will work. We'll see. It didn't work last week. We'll see if it people are more conditioned this week, but we will see. I have a home ownership question for you, Wai.
Okay.
Have you ever had a raccoon to deal with on your property?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you get rid of these things?
So where are they? Where's the raccoon? Or where are the raccoons?
I woke up this morning to a raccoon in my backyard. Okay, fine. Enjoy your stay, but you're loitering now. He has been there since I woke up this morning, and he's just roaming there. I don't think he can physically hop the fence. I think he's stuck in my backyard. I've assigned a gender to him, and he's just wandering. Like he's just on my deck in the back, climbs onto my bike, and it's just like going in circles all day long, comes up to the window. I'm like, how do I get rid of this thing? Like, I'm not lifting it and like
there's no tree for it to climb. No, they can.
There's a tree. You've seen my fence. Like, it's not like, you need to be like Jack and the Beanstalk here. But I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't look like an athletic raccoon. And my God,
do you have food around? Like, is there garbage?
No, there's no food out there. There's no food. And this raccoon looks like he's been well fed over the years. Okay. And I think that's the problem here. I think it's his gut that's not going to get him over the fence.
Right. I mean, it's the winter. Like, I think they look for places that are, I guess, relatively warm. Maybe you just kind of at this point hope that it'll go away. But like, if it starts, doing certain things, I mean, I've heard of like remedies, like some sort of like spice mixture you could create, or I believe like fox piss if you really want, John.
You know what? Just ran out of fox piss.
You can actually buy
my pet fox is actually in the shop right now, so I don't have any urine from a fox to obtain. But if anyone has a fox out there, would love to know. Yeah, so that's what I'm dealing with. Raccoons are a very weird animal. Like, it's in between. I wouldn't classify raccoons as like this wonderful part of wildlife that's out there. Like
they're rodents.
That's pretty much what they are. Like no child aspires to have a pet raccoon. Okay, I don't want to hear from.
Of course not.
It's a useless animal. I hate to be so blunt, but that's what it is. It doesn't contribute a whole lot. It's not a great part. No city is going to say, hey, you really got to see our raccoon life. They're wonderful creatures out there. They're just nuisances. They're very off-putting. They look awful. And they just cause problems. No one's ever happy to see a raccoon. It's just, a raccoon. I mean, they're not a skunk. Like, they're not going to inflict damage upon my clothing and spray me. They're just annoyance. They'll
damage your property.
They very much do. When I was a kid, dude, we had raccoons that would eat up our lawn to the point that my dad wanted to eliminate these raccoons, and the city informed him, "No, sir, you are not allowed to do that on your property."
But is that the only measure of I guess a worthy animal? You know, do we like them? Maybe we're a nuisance to them.
You know what though? But I promise you, I contributed more to the world today than this raccoon did in my backyard all day. That's all I'm going to say. So, I would put myself above the raccoons out there. I'm sorry to the raccoon lovers out there. If you want to email me, don't. But that's my thought. I'm just a little annoyed. I don't know what to do with this thing. I just like, you've had a nice time. I've given you my backyard all day. Time to move on.
If you truly believe they're trapped, you should probably call the city.
Yeah, that's another nuisance. You got to call a guy to come to get rid of this guy.
You'd rather do it yourself.
I kind of. So tomorrow I'm going to negotiate with this thing. So if I show up on Friday night and I've got claw marks all over me, guess what? The raccoon won. Okay, the raccoon downloaded this show and listened to the first 5 minutes as his own.
Well, keep us updated.
This is the exciting day by day of John Pollock's life, from basements and raccoons and all things in between. But welcome to the show. We have a fair amount to discuss coming out of tonight's show, where next week, Wai, are we making the big trip to the Bell Center to see two masked men take on Samoa Joe and MJF? Is this gripping at your heartstrings to go see this live in person?
I mean, I think it's an impressive main event for a TV show. So, if I was in town,
the tag match,
no, Edge and Christian.
Okay, I was talking about the masked devil.
That
assailants that are going to be in action next week.
Maybe
the real main event.
Not that one so much. No, not that one so much.
No, Montreal's getting a big main event that you would assume is the main event with Copeland and Adam and Christian Cage.
Yeah,
two brothers.
I won't be. That's right. Well, not anymore. I don't think it's story.
Yeah.
Well, now they are actually, and maybe that's what they always meant when they said that they were brothers. You know, they had a similar father figure, I suppose. But I won't be.
Yeah, Wai's actually so disgusted by this this devil angle that he's actually going on strike next week. He's not even going to watch Dynamite, I feel.
I might not be here next week. No.
Okay, well, I've jinxed it then. We also have a contest that we announced on Monday. And just to alert everybody that if you are in the Toronto area, we want to send you to the Iron Claw screening that is coming up on Thursday, December the 14th at the Scotiabank Theatre in downtown Toronto. We are running a pair of contests. Number one is that if you go follow us on Instagram at Post Wrestling, all you have to do is simply follow us and tag a friend that might be interested in such a movie chronicling the lives of the Adkissons / Von Erichs, and you will be entered in this draw to win tickets. And then our fun contest that is going online through our X account is you can cast any wrestler biopic that you would love to watch. Just give us the image of the wrestler and who you would cast to play that. We've already got some great entries already of people that could portray wrestling legends, wrestling stars of such, and we will go through a rigorous screening process to see who has the best casting out there, and you will be walking away with tickets to go see this movie before everyone else. You can see this a full week before it comes out and hits theaters. So the deadline is a week from Friday to get in all of your entries, and there you go.
Yeah, December 14th is the advanced screening, so you get to see it more than a week in advance of everybody else. So if you are in Toronto, want some free tickets to go see this movie, just enter either of the two contests or both of the two contests on Twitter and on Instagram at Post Wrestling.
We go on over to Monday's edition of Raw, which was a huge episode for the company coming off of the Survivor Series and the returns of CM Punk, Randy Orton, and R-Truth, as the show drew 1,884,000 viewers and a 0.65 in the demo. So this was a 29% increase in viewers and a 34% increase in the demo from the week prior. This was highlighted by a commercial-free hour one that nearly did 2 million viewers and over 900,000 in the demo. And staying throughout the show, the audience dropped 12%, but there was an increase for the final quarter that featured both the conclusion of the Dominic Mysterio Randy Orton match and CM Punk's address to the world that he is home. He has found his way back home after a decade away. So this was Raw's largest audience since the 2 nights after SummerSlam. For the demo, third biggest of the year, behind the night after WrestleMania and the Raw 30th anniversary special back in January. So very, very healthy numbers. And in Canada, 349,000 viewers, 140,000 in the demo. This would be the highest audience in Canada since the night after WrestleMania, and up 49% in viewers from last week. So this was a big enough Raw that both of our countries acknowledged it was a big deal, which does not happen too often. We are rarely in alignment with our American counterparts when it comes to a number being up in the US and Canada following suit. But obviously a big edition of Raw, tons of buzz coming out of the show, and we'll see how this momentum goes forward. It's usually a lull this period for WWE, as they've got now an extended break before the Royal Rumble, but there's a whole lot going on. And I would say in particular Raw, you've got all these irons in the fire with all of these stories going on, all of the, like the Punk story with Rollins, with Cody, with Drew McIntyre, with Judgment Day. It seems that there's a lot of energy behind, I would say, WWE as a whole, but in particular Raw. That do you expect Punk to be Raw specific over this period?
I do. I mean, he's working a program with Rollins right now, and I don't see them juggling him on both shows, unless he wants to campaign for some sort of longer term program with Roman Reigns, perhaps. But I see him maybe sticking to Raw for now. But this is a very good problem for them to have, especially heading into WrestleMania season, and specifically Royal Rumble season, where they've set up a number of really strong candidates to win the Rumble this year. So everybody, I get the sense, is going to feel like a big player, or at least several people will.
And it's the year that you now have the 2 titles on top of it. So, I mean, you do have that option that you don't have to go with the obvious pick. If you think it's a Cody, you don't have to go that direction. And you've got Elimination Chamber in the meantime, as you have for most years as well. Now, on the other side was Saturday's AEW block of 3 hours. And as expected, they took it on the chin with Rampage moved to Saturday night, doing 264,000 viewers, 0.08 in the demo. So falling from the previous week, where it was their lowest number ever in their regular time slot. Collision in its normal time slot doing 317,000 viewers, 0.09 in the demo. So for a regular scheduled Collision in its Saturday time slot, this would be the new low for Collision. The previous week it had aired on Friday, so that was a lower number. But back on Saturday, you can't take too much away from this, other than it was expected to take a hit going against the Survivor Series. But as I was speaking about with Brandon Thurston today, it's also the momentum that Collision, it just seems like with these premium live events happening so frequently, the show just, it doesn't even get its legs underneath it before, boom, they have one of these terrible weeks. And it just seems with each successive one, I wonder how many people's regular viewing of Collision has been impacted by just, they're just not becoming regular viewers of the show, and the overall effect this is having on Collision being on Saturdays and the frequency of WWE events. And, it's another 2 hours that you're asking your audience to squeeze into their schedule.
Well, the lows keep getting lower, John, so it's having, I would say, a cumulative effect on maybe the status and perception of AEW Collision, maybe even AEW as a whole. As the weeks have progressed, I would say, the show has like occasional sort of like bursts of like, hey, must see. But as the weeks have progressed, they feel like they're not as hot as maybe, or as important maybe as when they began.
What's your how do you typically assess if you're gonna sit down and watch Collision? Are you waiting to hear? Do you like cherry pick on the Sunday? Do you are you ever watching it on a Saturday night live?
It's kind of rare. I might, skip in, tune in little bits in there. Of course, I'll listen to Kate and Sino, and if they recommend anything, I might specifically. But typically, I'll because it's for like kind of work related. so I'm kind of a bad person to ask, I suppose. But like, I'll go on a Sunday or maybe even a Monday, and I'll just kind of like pick the segments that I really want to check out.
Yeah, I would be curious how many people in Canada are like, we don't get streaming numbers for Canada, but up here, like unlike Dynamite, and for that matter, Rampage as well, you need to have TSN Plus in order to watch Collision. So it's not just having your TSN cable package; it's paying above and beyond that. And of course, people can go through their alternative ways and means, but I mean, what percentage of people are going that extra mile for Collision versus just they follow through Dynamite, and that's their AEW consumption on most weeks. But anyway, not a great week for AEW's programming. We will see how it fares this week without any competition, as they are in the clear this Saturday beyond their usual sports that they have to go up against. Next story is one that concerns the AEW Disciplinary Committee, which maybe was the working title for this group that the devil is leading, the Disciplinary Committee, if we can only so hope. But this report came from Fightful Select, who this came after a tweet from Bryan Danielson that kind of sparked this when 2 days ago on Monday, so this is 2 days after CM Punk shows up at WWE, he wrote, "My dad always told me the right thing is often the hardest thing to do. It won't always make the most money. It won't always be the most popular, but it's still the right thing." So this was kind of a cryptic message, and this report by Fightful gave a bit more of context to this. And the report reads that Fightful revealed that a long rumored member of the disciplinary committee, Mega Perek, had actually stepped back from a lot of her duties as chief legal officer by that time when this was all going down around All In, All Out. We've since learned that AEW General Counsel Chris Peck, who assumed many of her responsibilities, was part of the 3-person committee along with an outside attorney. However, there was also one long-respected member of the talent roster that was involved in Bryan Danielson. When asking sources on the AEW roster about his inclusion, one called him an appropriate moral compass who exemplifies objectivity and said that he effectively headed up and was the face of the disciplinary committee. Danielson was said to have spoken to the roster when addressing them about Punk's termination and noted that the decision was a particularly hard one. He cited the positives that Punk brought and his longstanding friendship with Punk, but said that it was the decision that had to be made. Now, it's also worth noting that when they announced Punk's release from the company in the press release, it stated that following the investigation, the AEW Discipline Committee met and later convened with outside legal counsel before making a unanimous recommendation to Tony Khan that CM Punk be terminated with cause. So this was, the committee was in agreement and made this recommendation to Tony Khan that he said both in his address in Chicago and it was conveyed in the press release. But I just wanted some of your thoughts, Wai, about going about this and utilizing somebody on the roster that I think would be pretty universally respected. Like if you were to look up and down the roster of someone you would appoint for such a role, I think it'd be a short list and Danielson would be on that list. But in any way, do you think that puts any conflict, just in the sense that here is a performer and he is put in this dual role of management and a member of the locker room? Like it is quite a bit of a burden to put on one guy's shoulders, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I would say yes, the answer to that specific question, but I think we might be able to make exceptions depending on who exactly we're talking about, right? And I think somebody like Bryan Danielson has had enough of a track record throughout just his reputation doing anything, as somebody who would be impartial enough to be able to, just do that particular job without sort of like, any politics perhaps attached to it. So I mean, I heard this, and however it got out, okay, I mean, the timing felt kind of interesting with him, like almost like leading everybody on using a tweet like this, almost claiming a responsibility before the story even broke from Fightful. Basically almost, kind of taking ownership of, at least partial ownership of the decision to, fire CM Punk. So I found that kind of interesting. But if you're looking at that locker room, and if you're looking at potential leaders and people who seem to be able to get along with everybody and are tremendous, like incredibly smart, and hopefully will have the company's interest first of all in mind, I think Danielson is at the top of that list. So if the AEW locker room is okay with it, then why wouldn't he be elected as their representative?
Yeah, I listen, at the end of the day, I think he made the decision that was the decision they had to make. I don't see any way after all of that goes down that you can bring this guy back again. So this was certainly someone that at the end of it made the decision with a company in mind and a locker room in mind, as opposed to this being somebody that I've known for 20 years and that I'm going to go out on a limb and stick up for. Yeah, it's a tough situation to be in, but I think he acted out in the way that I think any neutral party would have to come to that conclusion, that there was a point of no return, and they had tried very hard to bring this individual back, and this was a problem. That this was a very significant move that they had to make with the knowledge that this outcome of CM Punk going to your competitor was a viable option. And like it is going to be painted in such a way that, man, did AEW fumble things with CM Punk? Like, what other option did they have? This was not a case of the company not realizing what they had in a CM Punk or underscoring his value. It was, man, they tried to rectify and gave him so much rope that it was a case where this was an untenable situation.
Well, the argument from people that I think would be defending CM Punk would be that how much did they actually try to rectify the situation itself? How much did they do in preventing the situation from getting as bad as it did in the first place? You know, and I think a lot of blame could be, you know, we could dial it all the way back to before the workers' rights promo and everything else, and even ensuing after, you know, everything that had occurred. How much did management do to create an environment where a positive result could have come out of these differences? I mean, we'll never really know the answer at this point, but we could talk about it. So anyway,
we can legally talk about it.
We can legally, but by the time all in happened and the fight occurred, you're right. Like, there was no other choice but to sever those ties.
Also, sticking on the AEW front, the pre-sale has begun for All In next year, the return to Wembley Stadium. And as of Tuesday, WrestleTix reporting, and these are very early estimates, so these could adjust, but citing a figure of over 27,000 tickets out. So this would be below where they were at the same pace for the first event, but not off by I would say over 27,000 tickets out before the general on sale this Friday. I'd be exceptionally happy with that number for a show that is months away. And we were very curious.
Reportedly higher priced than last year.
Correct. Yes. So Friday is the big day with the public on sale, and we will see what the demand is there. But like, honestly, for a follow-up show, like I'm looking like if they can get 40 to 45,000, I look at that as a pretty big success at Wembley Stadium. Not everyone is going to look at that as a success. It's going to be the comparison to last year, but that was definitely a higher number than I thought that would be coming out of like the early pre-sale numbers.
I mean, there's no doubt that, I mean, that's the metric I think we would have used for this year's edition, right? You know, even at 40K, it would have been, All In would have been a success. But I think there's very much a perception risk with running Wembley again. And if you're going from 80,000 to 40,000, I mean, that's a huge loss for your public perception of your company's popularity, right? That's the number that I think most of the audience will focus on. And I think that sort of data does have an effect on, I guess, you know, audience interest. The same way an 80,000 number that they could boast about might have also had an effect on audience interest.
Well, I mean, if you're at 27 already, and I mean, I think it'd be very comfortable that they're going to hit over 30 by Friday, and you're telling me from now until August that they're not going to move more than 10,000 tickets. I mean, I would say that would be more concerning if they get out of the gate here with 30 to 35, and you have like 8 months here to sell tickets for the show.
So what would be a number, do you think, that could basically, be treated as a sort of an acceptable sequel box office to All In without sort of like detrimental effect to AEW's sort of perception?
I mean, honestly, I think it depends what corners of commentary you fine. Like there's going to be ones that if they put 70,000 in, it's going to be, oh man, what happened? You turned off 10,000 people.
So if they drew 40,000 to you, that's the story. Successful show, AEW All In.
I would listen. I'm never going to look at a stadium show, whether it's WWE, AEW, New Japan, anywhere. If you put 45,000 into a stadium, that's a profitable show. I think like that's a really impressive number, like 45,000 people. But of course, you are going to be battling the comparisons of year one. I don't think anyone can expect 80. But again, we are so far out that we have no inkling of what is going to be, number one, the overall momentum the company has. Momentum can shift, and what they will have for their card by then, that they will build this up. My curiosity for you would be, if you were just a consumer with an interest in going to this show, would you be someone that would just be grabbing your ticket now, or would you be waiting until closer to purchase a ticket? I don't think anyone has that concern that I'm going to be left out if I don't buy a ticket now. I think everyone knows you will have the opportunity to buy a ticket right up until the show.
I would wait personally. Yeah. Just because I think so much can happen. I mean, so much, how much energy and effort they put into the build, I think will be a big difference maker for somebody like me. If I was them, like I would like, let's say the idea is Osprey versus Omega, I would just announce it now, John. I would just say, hey, pre-sale tickets, we have a big match planned 8 months in advance. This is the match you're going to get. I mean, forget storylines, like whatever. Like you already have a story. Just say like Will Ospreay comes out, challenges Kenny Omega to a match in his home country. Like that's all you really need. But are they planning on doing that match there, or are they not? Could injuries happen? Of course, but if they had those plans in place, I would even announce it now.
Well, we'll see. This is all based. Like this number is pretty much the memories of the first All In. It's Wembley Stadium and it's Will Ospreay. That's what is pushing this pre-sale number already. So Friday will be an interesting day if we get any like hard stats about what tickets they move. And the last thing is WWE put out one of their famous press releases touting the success of the Survivor Series, announcing that the event from Chicago on Saturday set new records for the highest viewership, largest gate, and best merchandise sales in the event's 37-year history. Viewership for Survivor Series was up 44% versus the previous record set in 2022. This is with Peacock's edition now up to 28 million homes there that it's in, with 17,138 in attendance, which may be a legitimate figure that Michael Cole broke on Saturday night. The event broke the previous Survivor Series gate record set in Brooklyn in 2021, that being the infamous show built around the Golden Egg.
Oh, man, I can't believe it beat that one. Wow.
Yep, 3 hours to track down a Fabergé egg. In partnership with Fanatics, Survivor Series broke the premium live events all-time merchandise record. Sponsorship revenue was up 24% versus 2022. Could have fooled me with the sponsorships on Saturday. I mean, hard to spot them. They were so subtle.
Well, we
had
didn't
Ruffles, we had Slim Jim.
We didn't get a spot with the chips, but we could have. Maybe
you should have seen all the post interviews that they put online where like Bianca Belair's got like a bag of chips that she's eating as she's interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the visual of someone being interviewed with food to eat. No, thank you. Don't need to hear whatever you have to say. So Survivor Series, a big success. That was pretty much what they said.
And 2 new additions to the professional wrestling world here in the form of Ty Mello and Sammy Guevara welcoming a newborn daughter, as well as Alexa Bliss and Ryan Cabrera welcoming a child into the world. Congratulations to all 4.
Yes,
happy couples.
Yes, they both gave birth to daughters, and I saw a photo of Ty Conti about a day or two ago that she had posted. This woman was ready to give birth. I mean, this baby was ready to come out. So congratulations to all of the couples and their newest additions. So there you go. Welcome to parenthood. And I want to let everyone know that we have a new edition of Pollock and Thurston up today. Todd Martin joining us from the Pro Wrestling Torch, the co-host of The Fix with Wade Keller, discussing the return of CM Punk, the Tammy Sitch case, as well as the lawsuit over the WWE UFC merger. And and Todd Martin's prognostication that CM Punk would return back in 2014, and he was proven right this week. So check that out. A lot of people seem to have enjoyed this chat that Brandon and I had. So that is available on both the Post Wrestling and WrestleNomics feeds. And coming up on Thursday, we are going to be chatting about ECW December to Dismember, the much maligned and well-deservedly so pay-per-view from ECW in December of 2006 at the James Brown Arena in Augusta, Georgia, featuring the Extreme Elimination Chamber match with Big Show defending his title.
Quite the show. Yeah. Maybe some considered to be the worst WWE produced pay-per-view of all time. We've had a string of, like, I think pretty good shows that we've actually reviewed, maybe David Arquette aside, but I think it's time to dive into WWE ECW.
It is. And in fact, we are going to be looking back at some of Paul Heyman's thoughts, both going into this pay-per-view and a few years later reflecting on this pay-per-view. And one of the more controversial decisions, Way, was that going into the pay-per-view, do you know how many matches they had promoted for the event in advance?
No, how many?
Paid your whatever amount it was. They promoted 2 matches, and then you had to pay for this pay-per-view and just figure out what else is going to be put onto this pay-per-view. So here is Paul Heyman in 2006, just days before this pay-per-view, and being asked, 2 matches. Is this really the right call? Are people going to buy this pay-per-view?
If this chamber has enough intrigue attached to it, and the lure of this super quality tag team match between the Hardys and M&M can lure people and entice people to buy the pay-per-view, it'll do a good buy rate. If people are not intrigued by the chamber, if people don't give a damn about the Hardys versus M&M, it's not going to sell. I don't think it has to do with how many are out there. I think it has to do with the quality of what you're offering, the promotion and the marketing obviously involved, and whether people either A, want to see it, in which case they'll buy it, or they don't want to see it, in which case they won't.
Spoiler, they didn't. And we will talk all about this on Rewind-A-Wai Thursday, postwrestlingcafe.com, as we review classics such as Matt Striker versus Balls Mahoney as your bonus matches if you were so lucky to have bought this pay-per-view. So looking forward to that. Let us get into Dynamite tonight from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. WrestleTech's reporting over 4,600 tickets out for the show. And we have Bryan Danielson on commentary for the Gold League matches on tonight's show. And that kicks us off with Jon Moxley against Jay Lethal in the Gold League. Moxley with 3 points and Lethal 0-1 after last week. And they started off the match with the commentators going over the Triple Crown and some of the past holders. And this was essentially Excalibur and Bryan Danielson getting to reminisce about their favorite All Japan wrestlers from the 90s, and Tony Schiavone just kind of nodding along as he continued to just call the match. So
I guess I can't fault them for trying to, build up the idea of this Triple Crown as something that's prestigious, but to argue that it would be on the level of an All Japan Pro Wrestling Triple Crown is laughable.
What are you talking about, Wade? This is going to be the most prestigious Triple Crown.
The All Japan Triple Crown is not a big deal simply because it's 3 belts. It's a big deal because it's the top prize in the promotion, which I really have a tough time thinking the Continental Classic winner will be afterwards. I mean, they could prove us wrong, of course. It could usurp the Max's World Heavyweight Championship as the championship.
You've kind of got to build it first, and then it gets that acclaim. It's like what TNA did when they first announced the very first Bound for Glory. They were like, they pretty much marketed, this is our Super Bowl, this is our WrestleMania. It's like, you haven't even run one of these shows yet. Let us determine what your big show is going to be with what you present us. You can't just preemptively state, this is our big show of the year. You've got to make it your big show of the year, and then it will be received as such. The same crown.
I suppose so, yeah. But this is basically saying, hey, it's 3 belts in one. That's going to be a big deal.
That should be the tagline. The Continental Classic. It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Put your money where your mouth is. So Lethal worked on Moxley's knee throughout the match. This was very effective stuff after Moxley went for a dive, landing on his knee, and we just zoom in on Jon Moxley. Oh, fuck. And this would be our first F-bomb that would make it onto air. And the lethal injection is caught. Moxley tries for the bulldog choke, but again, Lethal goes back to the knee, go through the break. Moxley comes out of nowhere with the cutter, and then as he's on the turnbuckle, gets hit with a dragon screw. Lethal reverses out of an O'Connor roll, goes back to the figure four, and then a lethal injection is attempted, but Moxley collapses down, so Lethal cannot complete the move, but he's playing possum for a paradigm shift. Big King Kong lariat and pile driver, gets a near fall, everyone pops, and then the rear naked choke is applied, and Lethal uses his free hand to try and punch the knee, so Moxley traps the arm so he can't punch his bad knee, and then Lethal taps out at 11 minutes and 19 seconds. I thought this was a really entertaining opener. I think Jay Lethal, always very consistent. He's not always like the most flashy and standout guy, but in a match like this, built around a body part, I thought these two complemented each other really well. And I love that finish with the arm trap and everything affecting the knee of Jon Moxley.
I appreciate that this match was a chance to see a different side of Jon Moxley's repertoire. For one thing, I mean, usually he comes out, he's wrestling as a total bully and as a monster that, you know, it doesn't really sell a ton. This was entirely different because he had the vulnerability with the body part. Like it allowed Moxley to just basically tell, I think, a pretty well told like underdog story. And it took somebody who I think is a very strong technician, like a Jay Lethal, to bring that out. And, you know, his like a Jay Lethal sort of consistency make sure that every round robin match of his is going to be a certain quality, no matter who he's paired up against. So I think he's a very welcome inclusion into these brackets. So pretty standard booking, I would say, you know, up until this point with maybe other than the Eddie Kingston, you know, loss to Brody King. The favorites for the most part are winning. And I think early on it's perfectly fine as they, you know, build up like your overwhelming sort of I guess dominant champions, former champions.
Yeah, so Moxley moves to 2-0 with 6 points, and Lethal remains with 0. We go to Eddie Kingston's reaction after losing to Brody King on Collision, and he's slumped down in the back. Said he knew this would be tough. There's no scrubs in this tournament. Perhaps I was too arrogant and cocky by putting my titles on the line, but everything is earned, nothing is given. And I've got Danielson next, and he says, I'm not going to go back. I'll be humble in victory, humble in defeat.
I love well, we all love Eddie Kingston when he's like, you know, spirited and passionate and telling somebody to basically like, you know, like go F themselves. But I also love sulking, emo, vulnerable Eddie Kingston as well. You know, like this poor
this is the album cover.
Yeah, just slumped in the corner. You know, he's the guy who's, I think what's so compelling about him is not only can he be such a badass in ring and or even on the microphone, but he also has the side that's very unsure of himself, and it's incredibly relatable. So, you know, he's setting him like a big obstacle for himself to overcome, and I think that's just such a great ability to have as a professional wrestler.
And then we got a cameo on the show. It was Prick Bryan Danielson, my favorite, because we go back to him and there he is, and he just puts himself into promo mode. He says, that's how Eddie's reacting after just one loss. He says he's behind the 8 ball. I'm coming in with a broken orbital bone. I'm not behind the 8 ball, and I won't be humble in victory or defeat. I'm becoming the first Triple Crown champion. Great promo from Danielson. And then it was like he just went right back to commentator mode for the next match.
He might have to discipline him.
So they have announced the Blue League matches for Saturday in Erie, Pennsylvania. Bryan Danielson against Eddie Kingston, Andrade against Daniel Garcia, and Claudio Castagnoli against Brody King. Shivani is backstage, and he announces that AEW Revolution, featuring Sting's retirement, will take place Sunday, March the 3rd, and they're going to the Greensboro Coliseum, the site of the Clash of the Champions match between Flair and Sting, who are both brought in with Shivani. And Sting talks about the match from March of '88, going 45 minutes, and they made a big deal that we didn't just go 45 minutes, we went 45 minutes commercial free. So Don't think that Raw came up with the commercial-free wrestling gimmick, okay? These guys were doing it way before Raw. And says Flair put him on the map, and here the three of us are all these years later. And then Flair says that words cannot describe what is about to happen. Sting made himself that night, and he says this is going to be the greatest moment of my life, not of Sting's life, of Flair's life. Sting's
more
retirement.
than winning the championship after the Rumble, where he said that.
Yes, with a tear in his eye, which I think with these glasses on, there was a tear in his eye or multiples, and said that he will be by his side next March. This will be one for the ages, and they plug tickets going on sale December the 15th. So they are definitely leaning on history here for Greensboro, which, I think they should just blow up this weekend. And like, do you see this being able to attract an audience that is going to travel? Like, is this going to be that big of a deal? Because Greensboro would not be your first pick in terms of a location for tourists. I mean, this is, but historically, it obviously has a lot of sentimental value.
Do they need to rely on tourists to travel to fill the arena? I mean, okay, well, it's pretty damn big, 35,000.
Greensboro Coliseum's a big place. Like, obviously, they don't have to scale it to be full, but I mean,
Yeah.
you want to be shooting for the moon here for Sting's retirement. Like,
You're right.
Like, they have the chance to make this a really big deal, and they have the time to make it as such.
So would this be classified as a stadium level show if they open it up that big, 35?
I don't think the Greensboro is that what Wikipedia? I don't think it holds that many. Well, that's okay. I seem to recall like Greensboro can hold like over 20 for sure. But yeah, it's a big arena. It's a big arena than people realize. But regardless, it's one that is
I mean, I think having a real Legends retirement with like in a setting in town that I think has historical attachment to him is a huge hook, so whether or not it's enough to draw people from I guess neighboring areas or other places to go and see, I think it stands a pretty good chance, John. Like this feels
you
like
can make a big weekend out of this if you're AEW, and they should they should make this into a big like retirement weekend for Sting, and maybe lean on like some nostalgia. Like it's, you're booking this arena, you've got Flair, you're already halfway there, and there's a lot that they can do here. And this is one of those once in a lifetime chances that they have to do Sting's retirement properly and make this outside of just the regular AEW pay-per-view that is this month's cycle. And it would seem like they're going to have a gap between World's End and this. Like, it doesn't seem like there's a January or February pay-per-view. So it's not like you're coming back 4 weeks later either.
True, right. But, as I think maybe a lot of us would have expected, this seems like it's going to be the main event of that show, right? I can't imagine anything else. Yeah. So, if that's the case, you have to ask, like, who the opponent's going to be that's going to help Sting deliver, like, a main event level match. Will it be a tag team setting? Will it be a singles setting? A lot more questions to come. And what is Ric Flair's involvement? Will it be next to Sting or will it be against Sting potentially? Not in ring.
Oh, geez.
I hope, but at least in a managerial role, perhaps. I thought this was a good idea to announce the date as well as, just to kind of really drive home the sort of sentimentality of the entire occasion by having both of these guys. Flair's promo, he was trying to get into Ric Flair mode, certainly, and I feel like, especially in recent years, that's been a bit of a struggle. Definitely sounded more unscripted than his WWE appearances, for better or worse. Overall, I thought maybe enough to satisfy like the people who want to see Ric Flair get into Ric Flair mode, but far from, like, I would say, smooth, in my opinion.
He did note that 45-minute match was not scripted. Not scripted.
Really? Okay. A non-scripted match as opposed to all the matches you're about to see on this television show.
Yeah, all these kids going through their matches. There was a great moment too where Flair tries to get Sting to do the woo with him, and Sting goes along with it, and then Sting is like, "This is really wrestling, isn't it? This is like the '80s." That's what he says. This is really like the '80s.
Right. Yeah.
I would love to just like eavesdrop on like a car ride between these two, like just. Like they don't seem like the two that would be like hanging out like around the clock.
Sting and Flair?
Sting and Flair, yeah.
Really?
I don't know. They seem like they live their separate lives very different.
I sense they probably spent quite a few car rides together.
Well, next up was Mark Briscoe and Roosh for both men looking for their first points in the tournament. And we start off with some big chops on the floor. Danielson noting that Roosh possesses some of the hardest chops he has ever felt from anybody. Briscoe hits his elbow off the apron, and Danielson immediately is like, I think that's going to do a lot of damage to his hip. He should be really careful about that. And Roosh is selling his leg at one point and catches Mark with a belly-to-belly in the corner.
So I do wonder if this was actually selling, because a lot of this took place during the commercial break where he delivered like a super kick and then just started really favoring his knee.
Yeah,
And
I got that. I didn't rewind to go watch the spot, but like they brought it up that it happened during the picture-in-picture, and it didn't play into anything afterwards. So, I mean, he very well could have like tweaked the leg or something like that.
you had the trainer basically come in to look at him, and they told Mark to step back as the camera focused only on Mark, and the man was hobbling like, pretty well. So obviously we're recording this right like less than an hour after the show ended. I'm sure by the morning we'll find out the truth about it. Could have been selling, but it looked very pretty legitimate to me.
This tournament is going to face its challenges, and this could be the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Mark prevents the bull's horns with a spear, and then back to chops. Roosh with an overhead suplex sends Briscoe to the floor off the apron, and Roosh gets knocked off the buckle. Froggy Bow for a 2 count. Roosh then stops the J Driller and hits another overhead suplex, forearm smash, and the bull's horns to pin Mark, and picks up his first 2 points. And hopefully he is not injured, because he's got another 3 more matches in the round robin to go for him.
Yeah. I mean, it's always the trick when you're relied upon to, in these round robin tournaments to basically lift up the rest of the tournament with your points, right? So hopefully he's okay. He was okay enough to finish the match here and deliver a bull's horns at the end. So I thought the announcers did a good job, whether like assuming that this was a legit injury, the announcers I felt did a good job of incorporating it into the story of the match. And it actually made the match more compelling, because it served to create like a good gutsy come from behind type of performance from Roosh here. So it made the match more memorable than otherwise.
I don't know if everyone would take to this. Like, it is kind of getting away from like a true like way you would do this in a sport. But I thought an idea you could have, because of the injury concern and all the points being mapped out, is that for each side you have like an alternate or two, and if someone gets hurt, that person takes their spot and assumes their points, and that at least you have a legitimate reason if someone is out with an actual injury, and it at least gives you kind of that framework of, in the case of an injury, this is what we have. And
has the G1 ever done that?
No, they haven't. They usually the person just forfeits their points if they can't wrestle. And that just throws everything into chaos. Like, I'm amazed we haven't had more disasters in the G1.
Well,
like, imagine Kota Ibushi's shoulder injury had happened the night before when they're doing like the block finals. You know what I mean? It's like they have, for an event or a tournament that is booked over that month, and for all the different people involved, they've been pretty lucky over time. Like, they had Nakamura one year that had to forfeit a few matches, but did finish the tournament. They've been pretty lucky overall.
Yeah, I like the idea of having substitutes.
RJ City is with Toni Storm, and she is laid out on her couch, and this is just ridiculous, and it gets further by the week. She says she was rudely interrupted last week during her celebration, and they partied into the wee hours of the night. JFK was there, or one of the Kennedys was there. And she says she is dehydrated and has a touch of the gout. And we learn that she is going to be defending her title next week, and then has RJ remove her shoes.
Because of the gout.
The gout, yes.
Yeah.
So is she I guess she's cleared though to compete next week in Montreal despite the gout.
It seems like they're banking on it. But no, well, okay, I guess the tease, could it be Mariah May? That's the opponent.
We'll get into that. Yeah. Well, we can explain it now. Later in the night, we have RJ with Mariah May, who is like flirting with RJ, and thank you for putting me in contact with Tony. And then we reveal that they're outside Tony Khan's office, and she wanders inside, and we didn't get any resolution to that. But you're right. That could be the announcement of her opponent, which seems really fast tracking things of where you're going. If
wouldn't be sensical for her to just walk into Tony's office and walk out with the title shot. So that might not be where they're going. But nonetheless, I have no other real idea of who she could be defending the title against. I mean,
well, this has to pay off somehow with something that she is granted.
Oh, sure, yeah, but it might not exactly be a title shot.
An eliminator bout.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I just wish maybe if it's not Mariah May, I wish we'd have a bit more indication of what match we could be looking forward to, because otherwise you're just telling people this is going to be a meaningless title defense from Toni Storm.
MJF comes out with a cane, promotes his match with Joe at the pay-per-view. Doesn't like Joe personally, but professionally he respects him and what he's done for the industry. Joe didn't come here to line his pockets. He believed in AEW. And he mentions that when he was a child, he got a poster in the mail for TNA. And he was
Who's sending out TNA posters in the mail?
I have no idea, but probably it was from Ross Foreman, I would guess, to their mailing list of some sort. But anyway, got a TNA poster, and this converted MJF to become a TNA fan. He started to check them out and was amazed at what he saw, including Samoa Joe. No one cared that he looked unconventional because he was the baddest man on the planet. And later, his talents were not rewarded in WWE. Boo! Proper mistreatment of talent. He proved you don't have to be a massive male model to be a top guy, and you paved the way for guys like me. I see these two being very distinctly different people.
Yeah.
But nonetheless,
I appreciate the creativity in being able to link, I guess, your own career with Samoa Joe's. But number one, I don't even know if Joe would be like the first person you would name as somebody who broke that mold. Like there have been people that I think don't look like a typical male model that have achieved even greater
Mick Foley
status.
break the mold. Maybe
yeah, like I don't know, Yokozuna. Like did how far back are we going back here?
Paul White.
Sure.
Yeah.
And to somehow suggest that Joe broke ground for MJF to for his position. Anyway,
non-model. So it's like for dudes that don't look good.
I mean, we've all seen MJF with his shirt off, right? Like this is about, like, I would say much closer to male model than Samoa Joe.
Maybe Lance Von Erich broke the mold for the MJFs of the world.
Sure.
So he says that without Joe, there may not be an AEW. It's like, go on. And he thanks Joe. He says, I'm not too shabby myself. I paved a pretty nice road for myself. I built this place brick by brick since day one. The crowd's chanting MJF and notes some of the biggest names he's beaten, including Cody Rhodes, Phil, Jericho, Danielson, Moxley, Omega. But the person I was most lucky to survive was Samoa Joe, who is a wrestling legend. But on December 30th, it's not about your legacy, Joe. It's about mine. Calls Joe the final boss of this sport and promises that regardless of his knee, hip, and shoulder injuries, he's going to beat him within an inch of his life, and promises to show the world it's not about the size of the dog in the fight. It's about the size of the fight in the dog. And on December the 30th, I'm going to put you down. And with that, he breaks his cane in half, because real men don't rely on objects to stand on their own 2 feet. And there you have it. I mean, first of all, in 2023, to be able to non-ironically use it's not about the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog, and this crowd just ate it up. I mean, that is an over baby face, okay? Because that's a gutsy line to try and use and not just get laughed at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely award points. Well, maybe when he said it, you take away points, but the fact that he got a reaction for it, maybe you do give him points for it. Yeah. I thought overall, okay, despite maybe the holes in some of the logic in his comparison points about Samoa Joe, I thought this was like a good, serious MJF promo that I think is a good antidote to maybe a lot of the criticisms about his particular storylines right now being too entertainment and not enough sport. Like we know he can cut these great promos just simply talking about building up his opponent and then talking about wanting to break him down in the body of a professional wrestling match. And this was largely that. The entertainment was to come.
the goal of this promo was to build up the match and make it feel bigger than it did before this segment. And I thought he did it. I thought this was like a great promo to build up a match that is a month away. And I just thought like it set the table for this rematch. And what is this guy fighting for? Like, what is MJF trying to get out of a second win against this guy? And then all hell breaks loose. The lights go out and 4 masked men attack him. And Joe runs out to his aid, clears the ring, and then we get a screen with text. I think the same font from Clerks as well.
Is that right? Is it Kevin Smith? Is it Silent Bob and Jay
Kevin
who are
Smith
under the mask?
Yes, I promise you. Okay, this was man. In the shadows, our game begins. Next week, MJF and Joe, will you face the unknown in a tag team? Are you a hero, Max?
Okay, so you actually saw everything?
Yes.
Because at least on the fight feed, like it just went dark for half of this. So
it did go dark, and then eventually this came up. I did have the same, like there was delay between this running, and I didn't know if that was on my end.
But you saw the text before this, because this is the first thing that I saw. Will you face the unknown in a tag match? So whatever was before.
Okay, yeah, there was text before this that I saw.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Well, yeah.
MJF just gets on the mic. I'm sick of this Scooby-Doo bullshit, and he will take them out one by one and unmask them, accepts the tag match, and Joe is pissed because MJF is hurt, and he wants to keep this guy healthy for the title match next month. So we've got the partners that are not going to get along. I really enjoyed the first half of this segment, and I utterly detested the second half. This is a perfect exhibit A of a lot of the dissent about what is going on right now. And I think Corey Graves nailed it when, as soon as the segment aired, he just typed retribution with a question mark. And
he did.
Perfectly summarized, like, this devil stuff. Like, I'm fine for a prolonged reveal that leads somewhere and there's a mystery attached to it, but this is so goofy. Forget the fact that this is your main storyline, but dude, this is everything I don't want out of this show. And this segment perfectly summarized it, of the two competing goals that you are trying to achieve in your main event scene.
Well, I mean, maybe instead of tweeting retribution, maybe I would have tweeted Dark Order, because I certainly felt like it had very similar vibes to that one. And well, what exactly is sort of like the difference? It's bad production, namely, John. You know, like when you're doing these sort of like lights on,
cheesy.
Lights off, you cannot be corny. You cannot be cheesy. You better hope that you have, I don't know, like Hollywood level production when it comes to some of this stuff. And this was like so poorly done. You know, the lights flickering on and off, and then the worst part is, because they're flickering on and off, you could still see what's going on in the ring. And it's not like these masked men came into the ring to attack MJF. They basically ran into the ring, and MJF just kind of got into position for them as if the lights were off, but we could see everything going on. It looks bad. And to come off of, like, you know, what was pretty, like a pretty good serious promo from MJF into all of this sports entertainment like stuff is unfortunately leaving a bad taste in your mouth. Clearly at this point, they're using Joe as a surrogate for Adam Cole, as, you know, his tag team partner who's there to defend him. And it's watering Samoa Joe down, a guy who's typically, you know, one of the more real and serious, you know, wrestlers out there. To have him, it's the first time they did it at the pay-per-view, I thought was fine. It made sense. He's doing this to earn the title shot. To keep it up in this fashion, I don't know. It's kind of breaking my sort of immersion a lot.
I hated this. I thought it was easily the worst thing on the show.
The tech issues didn't help, at least for me.
No, but it feels very, very rinky dink, but it's like at its core, it's just a bad angle, and it really comes off as just really, it was the contrast that just smacked me in the face in this segment. Like this is the perfect 10 minutes to explain to people you are trying to do two completely different things, and it's almost like pick one and go with it. But you're trying to do both, and it was very glaring. And then okay, for all I want to say about that, at least it got our reaction from the commentators when they came back that says AEW IT security is on this matter regarding the devil. because as Shivani explains that these band of devil worshippers have been able to tap into AEW's lighting and broadcast system. And then they inform them that Tony Khan has made the match for next week. And the announcers have to be shocked that Tony has done what? It's like, oh my God, this is the best. Please give us faces to AEW's IT security team. Please let like Chris
Norton.
Harrington be leading the IT security team.
Maybe it'll be Sammy Callahan, the hacker.
Oh, they've hacked into our
Is it be Sammy
and our broadcast system.
Be Sammy Callahan and Mustafa Ali as the hackers coming in.
My God, don't give them ideas.
No, it's terrible. Angle makes everybody who has to push it look bad. That includes Joe. That includes your commentators.
It kills your credibility. Like, it's such a goofy angle that is the opposite of what you are trying to achieve with an angle like this. Wardlow and AR Fox, which was the best angle of last week at least, to set this up. Where the man was approached by Air Fox and then he headbutted him and left him for dead. So we've had a week to digest. Fox gets the jump with a pair of dives before the bell even rings and then goes for a shooting star off the edge. He's caught, dropped on the apron, and then is suplexed into the ring to start the match. And we get an impromptu technique by Taz, who explains to Shivani what the difference is between a Beal and a hip toss. Because this was a Beal that Wardlow executed. Wardlow then misses, runs into the buckle, takes a 450 splash, but kicks out right away. Big wind-up lariat, pair of power bombs, swanton, and then a last ride power bomb that is so devastating. Bryce Remsburg waves it off in 3 minutes and 14 seconds. And that was all the Fox said.
I don't believe he's done the last ride variation before, has he?
No, this was an extra level of grudge that he brought to AR Fox for having the gall to approach him.
Well, at least this week it seems to have replaced the symphony. So I'm happy for all of Wardlow's opponents if he's adopting this as his new finisher, that they no longer have to take like 5 power bombs in a row. So I mean, AR Fox is a really interesting story, isn't it? You know, like, it was like the focus of attention prior to All In for whatever visa issues or whatever was taken off of the show, and then has since just kind of fallen back into jobber duty, right? So very strange what's going on with him this year. This was a Wardlow match you've seen, I guess, a million times in the past. He does the squash match fine, but man, they continue to be very forgettable. You know, he's been on TV. I feel now for like 2-3 months, and I everything's been kind of forgettable because it all just kind of feels like a rerun, right?
Let me ask you, if he was subjected to a urine test, would that get rid of this animal in my backyard?
Wardlow urine as a raccoon deterrent?
No, Fox.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure where you were going there. Yeah, maybe Wardlow's piss as well. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For whatever reason, they decided, you know what people need to see? Dante Martin's ankle getting contorted 360 degrees.
There was very much a good reason. This was the man in his return match, you know, and as awful as the footage is, I mean, it kind of is like gory gold, right? For like, you know, creating emotion. So I definitely think they should have showed it. In fact, I'm disappointed they didn't make a bigger deal out of this band's return. I mean, think about the weeks of vignettes we could have had as this guy is talking about, I don't know, the horror of suffering an injury like this.
He showed up backstage on Saturday. So I'm coming back.
Yeah, he did a fist bump, and that was the extent of the build up. That was his beautiful day, just fist bumping his brother. I mean, it's a shame because like it is spectacular footage. It's a horrific injury that we're all witness to live, and there's so much like emotion and story you could tell of a man working his way back from that, going through rehab, the trepidation he'll have of trying to reclaim the style that he used to work with that leg injury, and they threw all of that away.
I don't disagree. There was a lot there of just, here's a guy that you could have really tapped into, I'm sure, like what was a really challenging 8-month period since he got hurt back in March. And hey, sit down interview with Jim Ross. Yes, I'm nervous to come back. I'm part of Top Flight, and here I am, like, unsure of myself for the first time in my career. I don't know how I'm going to respond when I get into the ring again. I mean, you could have built up quite a story here. And on top of that, man, this crowd, they were really into his return on top of it. They got a great reaction, these three guys coming out.
It's their hometown.
It's their home. Like, they picked the right spot, but I would say even so, it's not like Top Flight are pushed as like this big team from Minnesota or in general. And they came out, and this audience really took to them when they came out. Like, this felt like a significant deal on the show. And we have Top Flight and Andretti against the Hardys and Brother Zay. And Jeff and Andretti start the match. Tony Schiavone, who could not have aged the Hardys more, brings up that the Hardys have been teaming together for 28 years, and Dante is 22 years old.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
Thank you, Tony. I'm sure they'll really appreciate this one on the rewatch. They go through the picture-in-picture, and Matt hits a side effect onto Andretti, but then he stops the twist of fate. Dante and Zay are in, and Dante executes a springboard crossbody. Matt makes the save, and then Dante stops the twist of fate, lands some head kicks, double team with Darius, and then Action and Darius are knocked off the apron. We see the poetry in motion delivered to Dante, and then Zay hits a springboard dropkick, knocking Dante off the Hardy shoulders, and Zay gets drop-kicked into a German by Darius, and Dante finishes off Zay with this half Nelson driver in 7 minutes and 56 seconds. So it is Dante picking up the win, and man, they are going to be throwing them into the fire, because in the very next segment, Dante Martin is now set for a trios match with his partners against Penta, Commander, and El Hijo del Vikingo. I was like, are you guys out of your mind? Welcome back.
Well, there are no ladders in this one, thankfully,
Thank God,
least, you know.
yes.
Yeah, spectacular booking. It's exactly, I think, the type of match you make to put all 6 of these men into focus. You know, you're delivering basically like, you know, a high-flying masterclass here.
I wonder if they're taping this for. They announced nothing for Rampage on Friday, and I'm wondering if this was being taped tonight to air on Friday.
Wouldn't you think they would have announced the match if?
I mean, they brought all these guys in for tonight. I would think they're probably doing the match tonight.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh,
but they never announced it for Friday. I would have at least said, hey, unless I missed it. I don't think they announced anything for Rampage. They just announced the Blue League matches for Collision.
Well, it'd be really disappointing if they were all there and you could have said, hey, this match is booked for next week, and you're left kind of wondering, but maybe we'll find out before the show ends. Anyway, it was a good showcase match for Dante Martin. I for his comeback, I thought he looked great here. You know, I'm sure we're not seeing the full extent of like what he was capable of before, but this wasn't really the match for that either. It was also nice to see him debut a new finisher that doesn't rely on jumping.
Yes, I mean this is probably a good finisher to have in mind. So we continue on, and we go to Julia Hart and Amy Sakura for the TBS Championship. With Julia Hart's title win, she has brought back the house rules. So Amy Sakura has determined no submissions in this match. So this removes Heartless.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, you can't win with it, but she could still apply it.
Yeah, she could use it, but not win the match with it. Julia Hart is also a native of Minnesota, and thus was given a pretty good reaction here. And Amy Sakura kind of just went with it and took over, like, you know, playing like the heel mannerisms and such. And they kind of just went with it here. And maybe to be expected that Julia Hart's audiences have been getting behind her anyway. And tonight it was going to be accentuated.
She's a bigger star as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Hart gets sent into the steps. We go through the break. Hart applies Heartless, but we got Aubrey Edwards. It's house rules. You can't win. And Sakura's tapping, but it has no effect. So there's a lariat from behind by Hart, and she stomps the ribs, climbs to the top, and she goes for the moonsault. And Amy, at the last minute, tries to roll over. Julia still lands on top of her and then pins her.
I almost get the sense that like Sakura was trying to make up for Julia's sort of overshooting of the moonsault, because it looked like she was landing pretty far away, and it was almost like Sakura was rolling into her to make contact.
She could have been
what I saw.
It looked really clunky the way this was, and then just pinned her anyway. So wins it in 7 minutes 36 seconds. You know, at least the audience like was into Julia Hart. I wouldn't say it was a spectacular match or anything, but at least, you know, Julia Hart is picking up steam with the audience, and that has been pretty consistent here.
Yeah, I thought it was like overall a good match. I think I'm a fan of Sakura anytime she's on TV. I think her intensity is really strong. I think her personality is really strong anytime she's in there. And she brought a good fight out of Julia Hart here, who continues to really connect with the audiences. This was meant to be a continued sort of showcase of Julia Hart in this new role as TBS champion. And I thought it was successful, so now we await to see her in an actual bigger feud coming out of this. I had actually missed the house rule sort of stipulation with the submission thing. They had Justin Roberts announce it. They had Excalibur announce it as well. But I guess I've learned to kind of tune out a lot of that stuff. So personally, I don't think it would have hurt to shoot something backstage. But man, then you'll get criticism from people saying this is too much like WWE. How could you show anything backstage?
RJ, this is where RJ.
Oh no. Backstage segment.
Yeah. Raw took over here because Mariah May went into Tony Khan's office, and I guess we will await the outcome of this meeting. Christian Cage comes out with security, including Jake Manning and some other indie talent here, and he calls out Adam Copeland. He wants to speak, and he's waiting and waiting. Finally, Copeland's music plays, and Cage hides behind the wall of security. Says management wanted security out here, not me, and asks security to leave. So they do. And Cage says, we're not going to make it to Montreal next week because I'm sorry. And he goes and mistakenly calls Killswitch Luchasaurus, and the crowd gets on him for the mistake. Says he was upset when Copeland took out Luchasaurus, and Christian was so mad that he got in his car and went for a long drive, and he reflected and brings up his history with Adam Copeland, how they used to use Christian's mother's Taurus when they were broke, not Black Taurus, but the vehicle. And they knew they were going to make it. And boy, did we. We became the greatest team ever, 2 of the greatest careers ever. And mentions how everyone knows that you grew up with a single mom with no father figure. And the crowd is just like, oh no, he's going to go there. And says, Christian might be the patriarch here in AEW, but I wasn't your father, but I was your brother. And my father ended up becoming your father. Are you keeping all this clear?
Yeah.
Christian's father was Adam's father. And he just like calmly included that Christian's father would discipline and hit him. You catch that line?
I did not.
He's like, he would discipline you and strike you. It's like, really? That seems like crossing a line, I would think. Anyway.
Yeah. I did not catch that.
Well, anyway, that's quite an odd non-parenting technique.
Okay.
And Cage says he loves Adam, their family, and then brings up Adam's mother passing away a few years ago, and how one of the last things she says was what she would give to see the 2 of them team up one last time. And Christian suggests, let's do it one more. Let's do it for Judy, the Judemeister. And Adam stands back. He's like processing all of this. And then Cage lifts up the belt and he's going to nail him with the title, but Adam kicks him in the balls and just says, nice try, dumbass. Shine that belt up because next week it's coming home with me. And oh yeah, go fuck yourself. And none of the censors caught this one. Not TBS and not TSN. This one made it right out on both ends. So anyway, everyone got to know Adam Copeland's uncensored message for Christian Cage. And next Wednesday, Montreal at the Bell Center, which is a big match.
Very strong go-home promo for this match. I think Christian is one of the best performers in the company at the moment on the microphone. He was absolutely great here. It feels like they've been building to this ever since Copeland has made his arrival, of course. And I think Montreal is the right place to do it. And this was a good go-home promo.
Yeah, I mean, based on the size of the crowd they get, I mean, it should be really like Montreal. It's an excellent crowd. You've got a big time match, and we'll see how much. I mean, they pretty much laid this out last week, so we will see how much movement there is over the next week. But I thought it was a really strong segment to set up next week's show, and I think it's the time to be going to this match. And our final match of the night is Jay White and Swerve Strickland, both 1-0 in the tournament. Danielson is back on commentary, and they all reflect on the Texas death match that Danielson calls the most violent match he's ever seen. And White gets tossed over the barricade. And did you notice this? This fan was like getting involved, getting a little too involved. And both Swerve and one of the security members like admonished this dude, like, keep your hands off the wrestlers and sit the F down.
Yeah, I did notice.
Do you think he should be arrested and put in prison?
Probably not, considering they fell into his lap. He probably shouldn't be like. I don't think he was doing anything that bad. It was
I think they were just being cautious. I don't know. Maybe he was just getting a little too rambunctious. But Swerve then does this awesome sequence where he's just going from one spot to the next with the flatliner. And I mean, this crowd, they really have embraced this near baby kidnapper.
You kidnap a baby,
mistakes, right? You got to learn from them.
Kidnap a baby.
That was like a month ago.
You kidnap a baby and you turn into a baby face.
Yeah, it's like he didn't really kidnap the baby. So I mean, the man has a line. He didn't.
Yeah, it's just a threat. Yeah,
that's it. White hits his own flatliner and a German suplex, Swerve with a big lariat. Both men are down, and then out of nowhere, White chop blocks the knee, Uranagi, and applies the Fujiwara onto the damaged shoulder of Swerve. But Swerve is able to roll out, snaps the arm of Jay White with his foot, and we nearly get the ref bump. And playing off of last week, Jay White goes to kick him in the balls, which is how he won last week. But Swerve is ready and catches the kick, and he lands the Swerve stomp, huge near fall. And what added to this, it was 10 o'clock on the dot. And even though they've told you now that it could go past the hour, you're still so trained to believe that it's going to end at 10 that this near fall had like an extra oomph to it with the time of the show right when it happened. So he hits the Blade Runner out of nowhere, but Swerve rolls out to the floor. And Swerve is brought back in. Another Blade Runner gets blocked. They trade these big chops. They announce there's 5 minutes left in the match. And there's a counter to the Blade Runner by Swerve into a cradle, catching him by hooking the leg and pins Jay White. So Swerve moves to 2-0, tied with Jon Moxley with 6 points.
Oh, this was a great match. I think my favorite match on the show. You had, two heels here, technically. Both of them very similar in style, both very cerebral styles of heels with very compatible in-ring sort of like, I would say, qualities. I love the idea that despite the both of them being heels, you had Swerve basically sort of like being the smarter of the two, being able to anticipate and even out counter the counter wrestler in Jay White. He was fantastic here, so fluid in so much of what he does. It was technically, yes, a double heel match, but this was Swerve entirely embracing, I think, a babyface role. This has been like a really good thing for him after the Texas death match. Keeps him on TV and keeps him in the forefront of people's attention, and it allows him to wrestle as a babyface against other heels in a very natural and organic way. So this follow-up to the Texas death match, whether or not sort of intended, has worked out really well for Swerve. He feels like a main character on this show.
I thought it was a really enjoyable match. I would go. I thought it was the match of the show as well, just ahead of Moxley and Jay Lethal. But yeah, I honestly enjoyed all of the Gold League matches on tonight's show. Like I thought each of them had their strengths to them, and I would say Swerve is barely clinging to heel status at this point. This audience is so ready to turn him, and they were right to lean into it in this match. It just seems like the audience is so primed for Swerve Strickland to come out of this tournament in a big way as one of their key stars for 2024 that it feels like he has been elevated to, and rightly so. He's had an incredible year, and it seems that he's on the cusp of reaching that next level.
Yeah, agreed.
So I would say tonight's episode of Dynamite, I think there was more good than bad, but man, did I hate that angle with the Devils. That was my low point of the show.
Felt like a pretty standard edition of Dynamite to me. You had progression through the Continental Classic tournament matches, and all of them are, I think, of a decent quality. Main event was the best one, but I don't know. Maybe my expectations are just too high for match quality on Dynamite these days after being presented with matches that we would end up kind of talking about afterwards. And I don't know if we'll talk about any of the matches we saw tonight. They were very good and certainly worth my time, but maybe it's just a higher bar that and then beyond that, decent show overall.
Missing like a bunch of like your stars. Like obviously there's the story with the Young Bucks that they're kind of written off, but like no Omega, no Jericho, no Hangman's been kept off since the pay-per-view as well. So it's kind of focusing more, and with this tournament, I mean that eats up a lot of slots on these shows that you're going to be focused on those. So for Rampage, Vikingo, Pentagon, and Commander did team up, but they faced Brian Cage and the Workhorsemen. That'll air Friday. So it looks like that's a setup, and they'll probably get to Top Flight and Andretti on one of next week's shows. So there you have it. Mm-hmm. All right. That is Dynamite. And if you want to chime in with any super chats, we will also be going to the forum where there's a bunch of feedback to tonight's show.
Yeah. DJ Depression says, where do I send the Fox piss, John?
You know what? I want to research this anecdote because I think Wai could be just pulling our legs. I've never heard this remedy before, but I will investigate. But thank you very much, DJ Depression, for the offer.
Look it up, John. Go ahead. Curly Mustache FTW says sends $10. Thank you for the support, Curly Mustache FTW. He says this devil storyline is convoluted, and MJF is a great wrestler. But if this is the story he's pitching, should he be top star right now? Especially when you see Swerve breaking through on a weekly basis.
I have no problem with MJF in the role he is in, and he's not the head of creative either. I mean, every talent is going to have ideas that they pitch, and it's down to like your showrunner that has to be able to weed out the good from the bad. And I mean, there's going to be plenty of pitches that you get that you have to be able to realize, like, is this working? Is this not working? Does this fit the tone of the show that we want to have? And they're very committed to this devil storyline. And I don't see them dropping this based on a bad reaction one week. They're going to see to the end of it. But man, I don't even necessarily drop the angle. I think there's something to this reveal that has some value attached to it. But man, you've got to give more of a serious, more adult approach to this story, because this feels like a bad like B movie that I'm watching.
Yeah, I think it's great to have a whodunit, and a mystery that lasts throughout several months, but it has to be done tastefully, and it's definitely veering on like poor taste at the moment, just because it doesn't look good. It looks corny. So they have to either reveal it quickly and make sure the reveal is satisfying, or just improve, I suppose, the quality of it. I mean, Swerve is on the ascent, but like, there's no need to maybe even make that comparison right now, because I think Swerve will get there. I think, judging by the first few matches that in this Collision Continental Classic, they have those aspirations for him. But I don't think it's time to just abort the MJF title run either because of any of this. All right, thank you. Let's go to forum.postwrestling.com.
Okay, we're going to start off with Mark, who writes, tonight's show felt incredibly focused, almost as if they're responding to a ton of the criticism as of late. No segments that overstayed their welcomes, no 30 minutes of MJF, very little catchphrase comedy, a clear direction on pushing several people in the Continental Classic, and clearly getting the company behind Swerve as a top-level guy. Roosh has also stepped up in the tournament. Great to see Top Flight back in action. Would love to see a trios title run with them. Julia Hart's Kurt Angle-like moonsault, while awesome looking, is starting to get scary. Looking forward to next week's show in Montreal. Smart move to go with two recognizable former WWE stars in the main event for that market. AEW does not have French TV in Quebec, so it is definitely going to struggle for attendance.
I wonder, like in Montreal, I'm assuming a lot of people will be watching, just like most of us over here on the TSN apps. So they haven't done Montreal before, right?
No, this is the first time in the market, which is why I thought, the first time in, I thought they were going to do, and they're doing 2 nights as well next week. I would say.
And you know how ticket sales are at the moment?
They haven't been like overwhelming for that market. Like I think they're both under 4,000 at last check, which for the Bell Center, like you've been in there. I mean, that's an NHL sized arena.
Yeah. Let's go to Andrew from Cape Breton, who says it was a fun show tonight that flew by. The highlight match was Mark Briscoe versus Roosh, and I love how the word fuck has been a pivotal part of Adam Copeland and Christian Cage's story. You only need one big swear word to make things impactful. The main negative was attached to the MJF story. So Retribution showed up and ran away quickly, and the hacker Solomon Crow or Sami Callihan got into the production truck. Maybe Mustafa Ali joined him. It felt like the Devil story may have gone a bit too far tonight, and my biggest fear is that it might actually be Tony Khan.
Maybe it's Mike Mansouri.
He would have control, sure. The logic is that he would have the ability to put stuff in the production truck, and he would ignore Adam Cole's injury if it meant getting the belt off of MJF. Now, granted, this might be the finger poke of doom of AEW if this happened, but that's my fear. It would especially be bad as I've been enjoying the Continental Classic, and stuff like how that is presented is how I would like to see AEW going forward.
I think it's an awful idea. I mean, it would be, I do feel that that would be the jumping the shark moment. I'm not saying for the company necessarily, but I think for enough of your fan base, I think that would be a killer if this was revealed to be Tony Khan and he is now your lead heel boss owner.
I don't think that's going to happen. I really can't see it.
This is not some isolated opinion. Like many people have thrown that idea out there. I think it's an awful idea, and I think that it would be very, very counterproductive. Extremely.
Yeah. I mean, he himself is somebody who said that he doesn't want to appear on TV as an angle, or sorry, as a character. Now he's done characters.
He's done the character stuff. I mean, you can never dismiss that stuff.
I guess you can't dismiss it. I just think I feel like we can all immediately already know what the response is going to be, and knowing how bad this guy is as that character, how bad he is on TV, I have to think there's some level of self-awareness there. All right, your turn.
Muggin writes, it's pretty remarkable that Dante Martin bounced back from that horrific ankle injury. He looked like he didn't miss a step. In the six-man, Top Flight and Andretti are a good trio to chase either six-man tag title. Yeah, I was like reading either of like, oh yeah, of course they've got two sets of six-man tag titles. Swerve and Switchblade was a strong main event by having Swerve be the de facto babyface, since White and Lethal are working his heels, made for a better atmosphere than having Minneapolis sit on their hands. Copeland telling Cage off was very good symmetry. Montreal will be molten for both men.
And I'm sorry, I missed this super chat earlier, but John Taylor says, when the raccoon cuts a promo in John's backyard and says, I'm home, then John should worry.
Yeah, you know what? I could tell the raccoon was thinking that today, and it sounded much more genuine than Monday night. So I felt he meant it, this raccoon. But guess what? Daddy's home, and I'm evicting tomorrow, okay?
Daddy's home. Excellent. Thank you very much, John Taylor, for that support as always. Let's go up next to Mr. Kane, who says Mark Briscoe and Roosh tore it up. Solid match. Someone gave that gum Mark was chewing and placed it on the Seattle gum wall. Save that gum. What a great main event. A unique matchup between Swerve and Switchblade, an even more unique sequence of innovative moves and technical counters. Along with Mox and Lethal, that's the level of physicality I love to see from the Continental Classic and AEW in general. MJF has that pimp walk down. The cane, the bling, probably has a heck of a right hand with that diamond ring. Tremendous. What's more tremendous was his promo. Max put over Samoa Joe so damn well. That's how you do it. Don't cut down your opponent. Build them up so that it means something. It felt so good to see Top Flight back, almost nostalgic of early AEW. High-octane offense, the closing minutes were fantastic. Christian and Copeland both brought some intensity, but more importantly, expertise into that ring with their build-up towards Montreal. Looking forward to it next week.
Okay, Wolfman Handsome. How the hell does Dante Martin make it back from snapping his ankle in half before Mark Quinn, a private party, makes it back from his injury? Feels like Quinn's been gone a long time. How about the devil is revealed to be Tony Khan channeling how? No, I don't want to entertain this at all. Yeah, Mark Quinn's been out actually exactly a year. Listen, all injuries are different, and some are very. Look at Thunder Rosa. For all the criticism she received, she's been out like over a year at this point with her back injury. It's like, dude, injuries suck, and they can be, varying levels of severity. So, I mean, I don't think there's too many people that are just, not jonesing to be back from an injury. A year for somebody in that age bracket has got to be exceptionally frustrating.
Let's go to Cody from Maine. What will AEW's response to Raw be? Was a commonly asked question over the last 2 days. The answer was what was was what most probably expected. A show with some really good wrestling, story progression, and an all-around more focused feel. And I thought it translated well. This was a really good show. The only complaint I have is with Wardlow, where his appearance tonight was more of a don't forget about him squash match as opposed to anything substantial, which is fine unless it's for a guy who we've seen in a million squash matches. I'm looking forward to next week. I presume we'll see the uncrowned mother of the patriarchy cost Adam Copeland his match next week, as obviously the feud with Christian Cage has a bit longer to go.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe we will get Shayna next week in Montreal. Brian in New Jersey, a quality wrestling show. I thought the Continental Classic matches this week were a big step up from the matches last week. Swerve is on the next level these weeks. I enjoyed the Copeland Christian segment, but on TBS, they forgot to censor the F-bomb. Not the first time this has happened, following the scene with Rick Ross and Keith Lee last year. Great night with Dante Martin. Only real in-ring blemish to me was the finish to Julia Hart and Amy Sakura, Toni Storm and Mariah May, leaving bigger impressions outside of the ring. The sooner they unmask the Devil Army, the better. No need for prolonged, recycled, masked goon attacks. Yeah, that's what we'll call it. Masked goon attacks. You're right, Brian. We can definitely retire those from the wrestling tropes, but there you have it. So it seems overall like a well-received Dynamite, but not one that was flawless either.
Yeah, with the big flaw being MJF and the Devil storyline.
Yes, and concerns about Tony Khan being the devil. So that is my takeaway from the people out there. So thanks everyone for tuning in tonight for Rewind-A-Dynamite. Again, we're back on Thursday. PostWrestlingCafe.com. All patrons will have access to our rundown of ECW December to Dismember. We have got notes on the show. We have got comments from Paul Heyman before and after December to Dismember, and quite the news pack, including one item that, blew my mind that this was there. Just one sentence, but it was amazing. So we will be revisiting December of 2006. Wai Ting is off to watch a dreadful show. By the end of it, you're going to be this was the best Dynamite of the year after you watch December to Dismember. So there you have it. Friday night, we're back live. Rewind to SmackDown. A programming note, Post Pro Res is going to be delayed until next Friday. So WH Park, Karen Peterson, they will be hitting you with their latest show Friday, December the 8th. And then we've got Collision Course this coming Saturday on the Café with Kate and John Cena and all of that great stuff as well. So go check out all the latest post wrestling. And thank you to everybody that has tweeted us their images from Spotify with their annual wrap. A great marketing gimmick, especially when we are the benefactors of your listening pleasure. And anyone who spends any time listening to us, we obviously thank you very much for spending so many time listening to us talk about pro wrestling, MMA, and raccoons.
Yeah. Send John your raccoon repellent suggestions and tips.
Yes. If you've got any better options than Fox Piss, I'm all ears. So with that said, goodbye, good night, and we will speak with you on Thursday.